So I'm going to sign a series of bills that are going to make Florida remain as the #1 state in the country for the protection of our kids. First, HB 777 strengthens Florida's laws against luring or enticing children by expanding the definition of the crime, increasing penalties, and eliminating certain defenses based on a child's misrepresented or mistaken age. I'm also signing HB 1351, which strengthens registration, reporting, and verification requirements for sexual predators and offenders in Florida. The bill also enhances accountability and improves law enforcement monitoring of offenders' location and employment activities. You know, some of these offenders, they exploit loopholes in the system to be able to set up shop in certain communities, acting like they're just visiting or going back. And so this plugs that loophole so that if they're going to spend time here in Jacksonville, you're going to know that they're spending time here, and they're going to have to report that so that you can protect your kids. Third, I'm signing Florida House Bill 1455, which provides mandatory minimum terms of imprisonment for specified sexual offenses when committed by registered sexual offenders or sexual predators. Let me tell you, just as somebody who has been involved in law enforcement as a prosecutor and, of course, is now the head of the executive branch in Florida, these offenders, sexual offenders, they are going to reoffend, right? So you can put them away for the maximum and say someone gets a 15-year sentence and they serve it and they come out. The chance of them reoffending is very, very high when you start talking about these sexual predators. And so you've got to have a minimum amount of time that they're just taken off the streets. Ultimately, the registry, all these things, they're tools, but the only thing that really, really guarantees the safety of the children is to find every last daggum predator and put them in jail and get them off the street. That's what you need to do. Now, mandatory minimums, some people criticize because they say, well, you know, you could have too much for this. And you know, the justice system is imperfect. I acknowledge that. But the reality is we have, unfortunately, some judges that just do not give the gravity of a sentence that warrants it when you're talking about abuse of minors. I mean, you will have some that will throw the book at them. Then you'll have others where it's like a little bit more wishy-washy. So this ensures that there's a baseline level of accountability where you're holding these sexual predators accountable. And again, these are people that are already registered offenders, and then they're reoffending in the community. You know, I think these sexual predators, I mean, remember, I signed the legislation to reinstitute the death penalty for pedophiles. I think that that's appropriate when you're doing some of this stuff. But at a minimum, they need to be taken off the street. You shouldn't even be in a position where you're having to monitor their every move and just hoping that somehow they're going to reform themselves, because we know that the chance of that happening is not very good. We also have on the docket SB 1804, which establishes capital human trafficking of vulnerable persons for sexual exploitation as a new capital felony offense. And so it's kind of piggybacks on what we did on the child sex abuse, but brings that into the human trafficking realm, which is a huge, huge problem in the world, and certainly in the United States of America. So I'm glad that we are doing really significant efforts to continue to fight human trafficking. Now, we also have with us today, as I mentioned, Brooke Curry, a Jacksonville teenager whose personal experience with AI-generated explicit imagery catalyzed legislative action in Florida this session. And accordingly, I'm going to be signing HB 1161, Brooke's Law, to strengthen protections for individuals whose images are used in non-consensual, sexually explicit, deepfake content by requiring covered online platforms to implement a notice and removal system. So these are people that are manipulating this stuff, but they can do it so well that a lot of people think that this is authentic and just think of what that does as somebody who gets victimized by this. And so Florida law does not currently provide a mechanism by which victims can request the removal of these altered depictions without consent. So Brooks Law will protect victims of digital sexual abuse by ensuring victims of deepfake exploitation have a clear, enforceable process to remove damaging material. Also requires covered platforms, such as websites and online services, to remove altered sexual depictions and copies of such depictions from their platform upon request of the victim within 48 hours. It also prevents legal overreach by maintaining platform immunity for good faith compliance, avoiding the chilling effects on speech or over-moderation. And then finally, the bill gives platforms room to design their own processes while enforcing a baseline level of accountability. I want to thank Brooke for her courage to come forward and to lead this effort. I think it's really important, and it also raises the issue of this whole artificial intelligence. They're talking about in Washington banning states from being able to regulate it at all for the next 10 years. And as governor, I want to be able to provide protections for you working with the legislature if that's warranted. This stuff is progressing so quickly, but you will absolutely get to a point where they can just take you, they can put words in your mouth and do a video, and you're basically saying something that's the opposite of what you actually believe, and they can have you depict you doing awful things. That's not the world that we want to live in, and so I think that the states need to be able to retain their ability to handle the emerging AI issues. We're not going to run away from it. We know it's going to be a part of military operations. It's going to be a part of a lot of things. Although I will say this, they talk about the power of it, and there's a lot of things that are powerful about it, but there's also a lack of common sense in some of these AI things. I mean, like, sometimes they just don't, they can't reason like a human being does, and so there's not only dangers with how good it can be, but there's also dangers by employing it without recognizing some of the limitations and the flaws that it has, because I've seen that firsthand, and I've had to go in and fight with like Grok or some of these and say, wait a minute, that's wrong. Oh yeah, you're right, I saw that. And then like they admit they were wrong, but I'm like, why were you wrong the first time? So this is a really significant issue of all the different things. I mean, how people's privacy is going to be respected or not, how it's going to affect the economy, and what types of jobs are going to be available to people. These are really, it's maybe the most fundamental issue that we're going to confront over the next many, many years. And I just think you as Floridians should have the right to be able to petition your policymakers to provide protections for you. If that's something that you think is right, they're trying to kneecap the states from being able to do that, and I do think that that's a mistake. Well,